If we don't change our ways, we won't add value to the process, and we will go the way of the dinosaurs.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast, helping appraisers increase their efficiency, quality, and make more money. Here's the guy who makes it his life's mission to create value for real estate appraisers nationwide. Your host and the Appraiser Coach, Dustin Harris.
Welcome back to the program, everyone. Dustin Harris, once again, hanging out in the podcast chair. Got a great episode for you today, I think. Can't wait to introduce you to one of my friends and somebody with a great deal of knowledge. But first, I want to remind you that we are sponsored by three great companies making your life easier as appraisers. First of all, Alamode. Alamode, of course, is the software that I've been using for over 2 decades. You should be as well. You can get a hold of Alamode by picking up the phone and calling them at 800-ALAMODE. Or you can reach them on the internet at alamo.com. Datamaster, of course, is saving appraisers about 45 minutes on every stinking report that they do. And they can save you time as well. Check them out. Go to datamasterusa.com. It's datamasterusa.com. And finally, we're sponsored by Working RE Magazine, where I go on a weekly basis to check out what's going on with my business, with my career, with appraisals. Check them out. Go to workingre.com. That's working RE as in working real estate.com. Well, folks, I want to introduce you to a friend of mine. His name is Jim. Jim is a part of my mastermind group, and I'm a little bit embarrassed. Well, first of all, welcome to the program, Jim. I appreciate you being on.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, I have to tell you, Jim, I'm a little bit embarrassed because I've known you for quite a while, and I've known the background that you've had, which we're going to get into in just a little bit. And I'm embarrassed I haven't asked you to be on the program because you bring a very unique aspect to the appraisal world that I think our listeners are going to be very, very intrigued. But it took you reaching out to me and say, "Hey, Dustin, nudge, nudge. Let's talk about some things that listeners might be interested in." And I thought, man, what a fabulous idea. So thank you, Jim, for being willing to be on, and thank you for your background and being willing to share that with the listeners.
No, I really like it. I kind of have a unique background, and I want to share it with people.
Well, let's talk about that. If you don't mind,
okay.
Tell us a little bit about your background as an appraiser and kind of the uniqueness of where you come from.
My background, my introduction to appraisal actually started in '89 when I was a student in college. I went to work for a large, pretty much commercial appraisal company, and I worked there through college. And I left and got a job, and I didn't like that job, and I was looking for another one. And one of the owners of the company said, "Hey, come work for us." And I was like, "Okay, I don't have anything better to do." So the first day on the job, I realized that was what I was going to do the rest of my life. I found what my career was going to be, and I loved the first day, and I think I love it more now than back then. So I spent 25 years being an appraiser. 13 of those have been a review appraiser or very similar type of position in corporate America. 9 of those 13 have been for a GSE.
Okay. All right. So this is where the unique situation comes in, Jim, that I'm glad you're on, and I'm glad you're sharing this, because I think appraisers get really, really frustrated when it comes to the revision request and the different things that are coming from these GSEs. And you've kind of seen the other side of the table, right?
Yes, exactly. I've been there. I've been a part of some of those things that we now are dealing with. Some of those programs, some of those the computer programs that we deal with on a daily basis now.
Were you there? Remind me, Jim, and I think you've said this before, and I apologize, I don't remember the details, but were you there at Fannie when they started developing the UAD?
Yes.
Okay.
I started in '07, right before the crash.
Okay. All right.
I started when it was pre-government bailout. Mm-hmm. So it was a totally different organization when I started. The department that I worked in, we had 14 review appraisers. During the height of the crisis, we had about 80, and we were outsourcing, I think, 75% of our work at that time. Okay. So we had a very small department that grew huge, and then we still had to outsource a lot of our work.
Okay. From a top level, Jim, tell us a little bit. When I say top level, I'm talking 30,000 foot looking down.
Sure.
Help the listeners understand from a Fannie Mae perspective what they're most concerned about.
Accurate data, right, to feed the model.
Okay.
And what's missing in a lot of reports is the how and whys, right? How you did something and why you did it. That is the two things that are really missing in the reports. Because now that we have CU, any reviewer can go in and look at all these cells in a neighborhood, and if you don't explain why you're using each of the cells that you're using, they have no idea.
Okay.
And that creates issues.
You know, as an appraiser, obviously we deal with USPAP, and USPAP,
Right.
for all intents and purposes, granted there's lots of sections there, but we're concerned today about Section 1 and Section 2. Section 1, Standard 1, if you will,
Right.
is the development of value, and then of course Standard 2 is the writing of the report. Talk to the listeners about this process and kind of what makes you qualified to say what makes a good report, if you will.
So I have analyzed, reviewed, read, whatever you want to call it, north of 20,000 reports over my career.
Gosh, wow.
Probably way more than that, but that 20,000 is a conservative estimate. So I have learned there's two types of report writing, basically two main types of report writing. And I equate those to movies or directors. You have the Quentin Tarantino type of report that has information that's just, it's not formatted very, very well. You have to, basically like a Quentin Tarantino movie, you have to watch the whole movie until you figure out what's going on.
Right.
Then you have a Robert Zemeckis film like Forrest Gump, where it just lays it just in a very organized, timely manner that you know what's going to happen at the end of the movie before you get to the end of the movie. And those are the...
Wait a second. Are you saying I shouldn't be a Tarantino appraiser? Is that what
Exactly. Because when you're reviewing these reports and you're sitting in a cubicle half a continent away, it's very hard to understand the appraiser's logic as they go through all these steps when they have step 1 buried in an addendum 4 pages, 10 pages back, and then you have to go to step 2 back into the 1004, and then you're constantly having to jump around the report to find what they're trying to do.
I know what I did.
Yeah, you know what you did, but trust me, I've been an appraiser 25 years, and some of these reports you read and you're scratching your head going, what is this appraiser doing? So I realized that there are two types of reports, and the Forrest Gump type of report was much easier to read. It lays it out like, okay, you find in their addendum where they talk about everything, and then it flows very nicely.
Gotcha. Okay. So with 20,000 plus appraisals rather under your belt, Jim, talk to me about what a bad report looks like. Let's start with that.
Bad report starts with let's start with the 1004. Let's say you have a little bit of room in the report in one of the narrative sections, like the neighborhood area. So you start typing in there and you run out of room, and then you say, see addendum. And then you go. Wait a minute.
The software does that for me. I can't help it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's so easy, right?
Right.
So you have to. So somebody reading your report has to go back to the addendum in that part, find that piece, and there may be only 3 words left, right?
Right.
They couldn't fit in that field, and you're going, okay, I just wasted that time. Then you go to the next field. Like down in one of the big things right now that I'm seeing on social media and stuff is let's say you have a well and septic, which is considered typically not typical, right?
Okay.
So every client wants a notice a statement in your report saying that, the well and septic are typical utilities for the area, and comps such and such and such and such have the same utilities, right? A lot of times that will be buried on page 16 in the addendum somewhere. That's very difficult to find.
Well, Jim, I'm proud to say mine's on 15. So.
No. Okay. So it's one that you have to skip around to answer all these questions. And what has happened, so after I left Fannie Mae, I went to work as an underwriter. And the world had changed since I was part of the front end of the business 10 years prior to that. Now we have these basically logic-driven reviews that program, read your report, and spits out these questions for the underwriter to answer. So all that needs to be in a certain part of your addendum, in the same part of your addendum. We'll get to that in a little bit.
Okay. So let me just parrot back what I think you're saying, and add or take away from this, if you don't mind. I just want to make sure I and the listeners understand. A bad report is one that, first of all, is hard to follow. And in other words, you use the example of the overflow option.
Yeah.
It just is not organized very well. But the other part
Right.
of this, and this is, Tim Anderson talks about this a lot as well. Of course, Tim being a USPAP instructor and an expert in this field. He also, of course, helps appraisers who find themselves before the state board. So he knows a little bit about what the state's going to come for you on. And one of the things he says is it's one thing to do something. It's a whole other thing to explain what you did and why you did it.
Yeah.
Do you see in the 20,000 reports that you've looked at that that's lacking, that appraisers not describing what they did?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's very lacking. And if we don't change our ways, we won't add value to the process, and we will go the way of the dinosaurs.
Okay.
If we don't add some type of value to our reports, then there's so much technology out there now that all they would need would be somebody to go inspect a house, right? If we're not the local market experts in explaining why we're local market experts and providing reports that somebody half a continent away can understand, then we're not adding value to the process.
What about the other side of this, Jim? I remember years ago, this is 20 plus years ago, when I turned in my sample reports to the state, and they came back with their list of things they didn't like. And one of their biggest was they said there's too much boilerplate. So do you see the opposite side of this? In other words, there's too much data in reports?
Well, yeah, one of the things I see is where, like, really the level analysis boils down to, there's one sentence in the whole report that says, I reconciled to comp 2 and 4 because of bam, and that's it. And then there's 50 pages of boilerplate that doesn't add any value to that report to the reader.
Right.
The appraiser may think that, okay, they're a lot of it's like definitions of paired sales, definitions of different types of kinds of adjustments, but it's not explaining exactly how you adjusted for GLA on that.
Gotcha.
In that report.
So there's nothing, let me make sure I understand. So Jim, there's nothing wrong with some CYA, right? I mean,
I have 3 pages of it.
Okay. All right. Because over the years, I found that there's certain things that underwriters just ask for over and over and over again. It just makes sense to put them in pretty much every report. But you're saying don't stop there. You've got to go into details and not just give a general explanation as to where your GLA adjustment came from, for example. Give specifics with each report.
Well, if you remember when the 2005 1004 came out, Fannie Mae had all those phone calls and stuff, and they talked about, hey, you can write this whole report in the form. We're giving you enough space to write everything that you need to write in the form, and we're good with that. Well, that lasted about 5 minutes when the next USPAP change happened. Right. So people, then you have all your overlays. So what I found reading all these reports were there 3 pieces to the report. There's the form, the 1004. We're talking about 1004. So 1004. There's what I call the love letter to the underwriter or reviewer. And then there's a third part that is all your CYA. Like I'm in a non-disclosure state, so I have a clarification to certification 10 that says, I can't verify sales price. Basically, that's what it says. And then I have a longer scope of work that tells what tools I used, what my data sources were, and all that. So I have all that in my report, but it's way in the back. It's if you really want to go back there and read that, you're welcome to, but you don't have to. I mean, that's gonna be the same in everybody, very similar to everybody's reports. Okay. So what I found was the reports that were the easiest to read had this love letter, what I call the love letter to the underwriter or the reviewer.
I love it. We're talking with Jim Stafford. He is an appraiser extraordinaire and lots of experience with Fannie Mae and reviews. When we get back, Jim, I want to talk more in detail about what makes a good appraisal report. We've already talked about what maybe makes I don't know if I dare call it bad appraisal report, but okay, yeah, I'll call it bad appraisal report. But more importantly, Jim, I want to get to this efficiency/quality balance and how we have the quality and still be able to keep up with the volume that's coming our direction. I want to pause here, of course, and remind you of some great companies helping you to keep up with the volume. Of course, DataMaster is helping you by saving about 45 minutes on every report that you do, folks. How does it do that? Because you hit one button after you've chosen your comps and after you've chosen your subject, and it imports data that you would normally have to type out manually or pay someone else to do so. Folks, DataMaster will save you time. It'll save you money. It makes you more efficient. If you're not using it, you need to be. Check them out by going to the web and type in datamasterusa.com. Again, it's datamasterusa.com. Another company saving you time with efficiencies, with mobile, with side-by-side view, with automatic adjustments, with overflow, as we talked about, that you need to be weary of, but yet can be a great blessing as well. These tools will help you to be a better appraiser. And one of the great things about A La Mode, folks, is that you can customize it for your needs. For example, let's talk about overflow for just a second. There are settings in Alamode that will ask you what you want to do when you have too much text. One of the things that will reduce the font size in that field. And I find that that's a great way to get more information, easier to find. These are the tools that you need. Check them out. Go to alamode.com or 800 Alamode. Finally, we're sponsored by Working RE Magazine. Folks, just this morning, I woke up to an email from Working RE Magazine. It was actually one I snoozed from last week. Didn't have time to read it. I snoozed it on my email and woke up this morning, had a great read. Isaac Peck, great editor, great writer over at Working RE Magazine. Folks, these people care about appraisal. That's what Working RE is all about. Working REs and working real estate. You can find them at www.workingre.com. All right, folks, welcome back to the program. We're talking with Jim Stafford, who has had quite a background in the review process with Fannie Mae, with some of the GSEs, and looked at a lot of different appraisal reports and comes very qualified to talk about what makes a bad report, what makes a good report. Let's dig into that a little bit more. Jim, by the way, welcome back. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, I enjoy it.
So we've talked about some of the negative things that you've seen over the years. Let's talk about some positive things and what listeners can do to make a better appraisal report.
Yeah, so what I found is the good reports that really caught my eye have a place in the report that just sits right back behind all the certifications of the form.
Okay.
And it's a summary. Addendum, yeah, text addendum,
okay.
Right? That just summarizes the analysis and conclusions of what's in the form, right? So the form tells you what, and then the summary tells you why and how. And then within that summary, it's structured a very simple, straightforward way. And what I found, if it's structured that way, the underwriters now go off checklist reviews. Like if there's well and septic, they have to see if there's that comment. So it goes down that list. So mine starts by any additional information that needs to be talked about on the very first part of page 1, the top part, the subject and the contract area. Kind of an overflow of that. For example, like if it's a purchase, the borrower's name is this, but the borrower and the co-buyer are these. I list that out.
Gotcha.
And then strangely enough, I put a summary of the physical attributes of the property. The subject is a single family home in a neighborhood of single family homes. It has this many square feet. It's da-da-da-da-da-da. It's about a paragraph. And then I summarize what the condition is, why I think it's a C3 or C4. I give that why statement. I give a statement in there why I think it's a Q3 or Q4 or Q2, whatever it is. And I summarize that. And then I go down and then I put my highest and best use statement in there. Now, the highest and best use statement is the most critical analysis that we do because that drives everything. But if you're writing a single family report for something that the highest and best use is, say, a doctor's office, then it doesn't need to be on 1004 anyways.
Gotcha.
So that's not the most important thing that we need to put in our addendum, right? That doesn't have to be number one. But that is a question that the underwriters have to see if we answer, right? That's on their checklist.
Right. And it's not just a checkbox as Tim and I have talked about.
Right. It's not just, you just can't check the box and say you're good. You have to, if you're if you're a duck in a pond of ducks, you're going to be a duck, right? But if you're a turkey in a pond of ducks, then we've got a problem. So you go through that highest and best use analysis, and then I talk about the market and the neighborhood. That's where I put those statements in. I don't list them in page 1 and say, look in the addendum for additional information. It's all within this part of my report.
Gotcha.
Part of the addendum. Then I go down and I talk about how I chose my comps. Now, the number one mistake I always see in reports is appraiser uses the mythical 1 mile radius and 25% higher and lower on the GLA. Right. So basically what we're telling our reader when we have that statement is somebody's going to stand on the front porch of that house and only consider homes within a 1 mile radius. Right. I mean, that's comps, that's substitutes, right? So what I do is I say, I provide a list of my steps that I took, how I went about looking for my comps. But then the next thing I do is I talk about each of my comps. Why did I use each of my comps? And how did I adjust them? And for example, if I have a condition adjustment, why did I make a $20,000 condition adjustment? What in that house is better or superior, or what to that property is better or superior? So each comp, there's about 3 or 4 sentences, depending upon how complex the problem is, or how, different the comps are compared to the subject. Like a simple tract home, there may be only 2 or 3 sentences there.
Sure.
If I'm a high-end custom home, it may be half a page.
Yeah, that detail's got to be commensurate with the difficulty of the appraisal, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. If you have 3 model match comps and they're all sold in the same, they're all built in the same year, they're all C3 conditions, there's not much to talk about, right? But if you're an 8-figure, multi-million-dollar property, you're going to be talking about the comps.
Right.
And you need to explain why you use them and how they differ from the subject.
Okay.
And then after that, I may talk about some sales in the neighborhood that I didn't use, and here's why I didn't use them.
Okay.
And the reason why I do that is you have to remember that the underwriter has CU in front of them.
Exactly.
So it's a totally different review process than when I was part of it 15 years ago, where you didn't have really any third-party data sources.
Right.
So now they have these third-party data sources, and you may have sales right on top of you that, spending 2 minutes writing this up in a report can help you save you revision request. That, in my experience, a revision request takes a minimum, an hour minimum each time you have to do it.
Okay.
So that's the second part. And then I talk about my adjustments, how I drive my adjustments. And I go line by line on the grid. If I adjusted it or if I didn't, and if I adjusted it, this is the date I used to adjust it.
Okay.
Then after that,
Go for it, man.
Yeah. Then after that, I have my reconciliation statement, right? My sales comparison reconciliation statement. I gave most weight to comps 1 and 2 because of, I gave the secondary weight to comps 1, comps, whatever, because of the value indicated by the sales approach is this. And then after that, I have another headline that says, final reconciliation. Then I talk about how I reconciled each approach, which approach I gave most weight of. And in my case, it's always sales comparison.
Okay.
I mean, we do very little income, and because there's not that much data, and very little cost.
Okay. Well, Jim, just recently, I came out with a course called Go Remodel Your Appraisal Business. And in that course, I have a whole section on this balance between quality and efficiency. On the one hand, we all know how to write, well, hopefully all of us know how to write a very quality report. On the other hand, we need to make a living. And so there has to be this balance between going into a lot of detail and being able to do more than one appraisal in a day. So talk to me. What you're describing seems like a whole lot of work. How do you do this on the efficiency side?
So I sit down with other appraisers to go over this process, and they're like, "Oh my God, how do you, this is going to take forever if you're doing it this way." And I sit down with them. I said, "No, I guarantee you this will be shorter than probably what you're doing now."
Okay, I love it.
And once we go through all the training, you're like, "Yeah, I see it." And I call it the big 3, right? I have the big 3, the multiple monitors. Using the multiple monitors, where you have your addendum on one monitor, and then you have your grid on the other, or page 1 on the other. So you can talk about what's on page 1 in your addendum by just looking from one screen to the other. And then total for mobile, which speeds up that process.
Absolutely.
And then the use of the tools that we have within total. And the one tool that everybody, or I should say everybody, but is mostly used is quick list items.
Mm-hmm.
And you can use quick list items in different ways. You can use quick list items on the form as multi-quick list items, where you can click one button and fill out a
whole section. Yeah.
A whole section. For example, like how I do mine, I hit about 5 buttons, and most of page 1 is filled out for me.
Nice.
So when I go out to the property, maybe something's different. Maybe I called like the flooring, I'll say carpet and tile, right? And it's average condition. I get there, and no, they have hardwoods. Well, I have a quick list item within total for mobile that I can just punch that right there, and it changes it, right? While I'm there. So, and it's not, and so that whole section of that report is one multi-quick list item. So I have them I basically have one that's designed for a Q3 C3, Q3 C4, and then a Q4 C4 and a Q4 C3. And then if there's a difference, to any of those items, I can change them on the fly while I'm at the house with Total for Mobile. So that speeds up the process. And then there's quick list items in the addendum that you can use. But the nice thing about how Total set up the quick list, or Alamone helped set up the quick, is you can have multiple quick list databases. So I have one quick list for Total for Mobile, one quick list for the form, one quick list for the subject area of my addendum, and then one quick list for the market area of my addendum. So, and then they're organized that I just go down the quick list. And then when there's a break in each section of my addendum, there's a break in the quick list. In other words, I have like a dotted line across there. So I know that these within this dotted line and this dotted line are for this section of my report.
So Jim, wait a second. Are you telling me that we should use technology to be more efficient? Dang,
exactly. So,
I love it.
So a lot of people use quick lists and they do speed up. Like when I'm writing my process to find comps is I have about 8 quick list items that all I have to do is add them together to make a paragraph that makes perfect sense. It describes exactly what I did. And I just may have to write a little bit of data in there. Like I used 2,500 to 3,000 square feet. That was my range for GLA when I narrowed it down. Mm-hmm. I may say I needed to go outside the neighborhood to find a comp that was not influenced by the builder. So those are just in series all the way down. So I can just, and you go alt 1, alt 2, alt 3, or whatever. So your hands are never leaving the keyboard. And it's a very speedy process. And I'm giving the reader exactly what I did.
Right. And this coming, of course, from years and years of being on the other side of the table and knowing what they're looking for. This is invaluable.
What I found too is people that have been in my position, we all pretty much do the same thing because we've all read those reports and we don't want to, we've learned from our experiences.
Right. So listen, this is one of those episodes that you don't want to just listen to once. You want to go back. Maybe you listen to this while you're driving around taking your comp pictures, go back to your office, restart it, and get out a paper and pencil and start writing down some notes, because this is what's going to help you to avoid. I didn't even ask it, Jim, but I'm going to ask it. How often do you get a revision request, percentage-wise?
Once every 2 months, probably.
Oh my gosh.
Well, let me say this. Something that wasn't clear in my report, maybe once every 2 months. Okay. I do get a lot of reconsideration.
Sure.
Value, Yeah. We're going through a crazy market right now. These prices aren't supported. They're trying to get me to raise values, which I can't. So I'm getting those, but as long as, and at the very end, what I do is I always read my reports, or I say, if I don't, that's when I get a revision request. My final read through is I read it through as an underwriter that's sitting in a desk, half climbing away. Like I don't know this house.
Right.
And I try to be as detailed with that review as I can. So, and a lot of times I will add maybe 2 or 3 sentences here or there, just to try
just to clarify.
But,
Love it.
Let's talk about.
I think every appraiser can benefit from this information. We complain about the number of revisions we get. We complain about some of the quote unquote stupid things that are coming from the underwriters. This stuff right here is going to help solve that problem for sure.
So when I read on social media about, I got this revision request, I can't believe they sent me this revision request. That's just a face palm for me. I'm like going, because you don't have it in your report. It's simple as that. Or you have it so buried in your addendum somewhere that I spent 20 minutes trying to find it. I couldn't find it.
Right.
So if something, here's a little thing. If something's important that you really want to allow the underwriter to know, bold it and put it 1 point higher than the rest of your text, and your eye will always find it.
Love it.
So bold it. Bold it and then 1 point higher. So can we talk about another tool that I use?
Sure, please. Yeah, quickly.
I do use, data import service, which, you got to have that if it's available in your area.
Sure.
Data Master or Spark or any of the others. Plus that puts in data, unless the data is faulty to begin with.
Right.
You're not going to have any entering.
Right. Your human error is taken out of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
But the one thing that I use in Total is the spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet allows us, and this is one tool that nobody seems to know about or use. The spreadsheet allows us to write automated statements. For example, let's go back to the A big one right now is well, let's say that septics. So instead of having to read through your report and making sure you have that septic statement in there saying that it's typical for the market, why don't you program something in there that, once your report reads that you have a septic in it, it automatically pops a statement into your report for you. And you can write logic within the worksheet in total to do that for you.
Yeah.
And I have about 8 to 10 of them in my reports right now. So that's a check that I don't even have to worry about, right? It's there. It reads it, it knows what it needs to do, and it automatically does it.
It sounds like a lot of work, but it's really not when you allow technology to work for you.
Yeah. So, Alamode has their videos online, and he goes through very simple, he gets you started. So I recommend people watching those videos, and that is a huge time saver. Huge time savers.
Well, Jim, you have been a wealth of knowledge today. I really appreciate you taking time. This is unpaid time out of your life. You're just there to share information with our listeners that will help them to be a better appraiser, a better report writer, more understood and less revisions. Jim, thank you. I can't thank you enough for your time and for your wealth of information today.
Sure, it's been a lot of fun. I'm glad I could help.
It has been. This has been Jim Stafford, and man, Jim, I just really appreciate it. Jim, of course, is a member of my mastermind group. I talked earlier, folks, about my course. It's called Go Remodel Your Appraisal Business, and really, that course is all about how to appraise efficiently and with quality in the new world that we find ourselves in. You can find it on my website, theappraisercoach.com. Just hit the products tab and scroll down to the courses, and it's available now. I appreciate you joining me today, folks, and we will catch you next time.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.